Hello! My name is Sarah Perez, the humble nerd that records in her closet, and welcome to the first installment of r/neckbeard stories on my channel. And we're gonna start in strong with the Wolfbeard Saga. I know, y'all are probably thinking, wowza, Sarah, you are super late to the Wolfbeard train. Where were you at, girl? The thing is, I've been listening to everybody else read it. But something that I've noticed is that, I don't know if I just haven't run into them yet, but there are no female Reddit readers that I know of. If there are, please shoot them in the comments so I can, look them up, because I'm always down to listening to new people. But most of the people that I listen to are r/, Redx, Hellfreezer, and, Dark Fluff. I love Dark Fluff. He's so cute. And while I love these guys so much, I listen to them daily, they're my YouTube boys, I don't think they'll truly understand, the female experience, so I thought it would be really fun to do my own take on these stories and give us goyles a good old-fashioned cringe from the female perspective. So I hope you have as much fun with this as I had recording it, because I love the Wolfbeard Saga so much, man! The plot twist, the cosmic justice at the end, it's just great, and it was really fun to act this out. So without further ado, here we go! The Wolfbeard Saga by Madame Macabre. Chapter 1, Wolfbeard. Enter the saga. Hey there, I'm new to Reddit and haven't really shared much yet, but after stumbling across this subreddit, I realized I might actually have something worth sharing here. I apologize in advance for the length of this, but let's just say a lot has happened. Several years ago, I lived through a series of horrifying and hilarious events with the beard in the wild. At the time, everything I was put through was rather overwhelming and even scary at times. But now, I can look back on it and laugh. I hope you get a chuckle out of it too. Without further ado, I give you the first tale of Wolfbeard. I'll call him as such because of his unhealthy obsession with wolves. He was one of those guys that collected just about anything with artwork of wolves on it. Shirts, blankets, tapestries, you name it. His obsession went beyond this even, but let's not get ahead of ourselves in the story just yet. I met Wolfbeard in my freshman year of university. At the time, he was, quote-unquote, engaged to my now ex-childhood friend. My friends and I have taken to calling her Miss Piggy these days, so we'll use this name for this story. Miss Piggy was your classic lugbeard, morbidly obese, lacking proper social boundaries, and extreme weeaboo extraordinaire. What ultimately ended our friendship with Miss Piggy was some downright vile and crazy stuff she did to a mutual friend of ours, and when I found out, I finally had enough and cut ties with her. But really, that warrants a story of its own. Needless to say, while all the shenanigans with Wolfbeard went down, she and I were still friends. Despite this, though, we had actually grown a bit distant at this time. When I was much younger, I lived in the same town as Miss Piggy. She wasn't always a full-blown legbeard. Maybe it's the nostalgia glasses kicking in, but in my younger childhood years, I remember her being around the same build as me, slender and on the taller side. And despite still being a little socially awkward, who wasn't in their childhood years, a super sweet and funny girl. We had been best friends since kindergarten. However, when the time came for us to attend middle school, my family moved away to a new town. It was only about a half hour away, but for a child that was too young to drive, I might as well have been states away. Because of this, we naturally started to drift apart. We only saw each other rarely, and our interests and lives changed. However, once finished with primary school and off at university with a license and car of my own, I decided to change this. With the vehicle, the 30-minute distance was nothing. So, I began to reach out to her in attempts to rekindle our old friendship. And in doing so, I ended up meeting Wolfbeard. At the time, Miss Piggy and Wolfbeard had been living together in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Interestingly enough, both of their parents had been against the idea of it, as they didn't believe either one of them was ready for that kind of responsibility. And they were, of course, correct, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. The apartment was in one of those sketchy complexes you really don't want to get caught in after dark. The place was a dump, and the air was constantly filled with a cacophony of unsupervised children terrorizing the neighborhood, and white trash couples screaming at each other and slamming furniture around. I almost turned around on the spot before making it to Piggy's apartment. But I had been the one to make plans to meet up, so I strengthened my resolve and knocked on their scuffed and dented door. I should also mention that she had not told me about Wolfbeard before now, let alone mention that they were living together, so I almost backpedaled on the spot when a tall, greasy-haired man opened the door instead of my friend. Wolfbeard was a big man, and I mean that in every sense of the word. He was very tall, easily 6'1" or 6'2", as well as morbidly obese. He nearly filled the entire doorframe, blocking the apartment within from view. He wore an oversized t-shirt with a print of 2 wolves howling at the moon, and one of those flat golf caps atop his clearly unwashed hair. But what was most off-putting about this imposing figure was his smell. His chapped lips pulled into a smile, revealing plaque-encrusted teeth, and a wave of horrific odor blasted my face. Vomit-inducing as this was, it didn't even hold a candle to his body odor. In all my time knowing Wolfbeard, I don't think he ever once grasped the concept of deodorant. You could always smell him coming before you'd see him, and with someone his size, that was really saying something. Before I could scuttle away, Piggy waddled up and pushed Wolfbeard out of the way so she could greet me.
"Oh, sorry about that. I forgot to mention it to you. This is Wolfbeard. He's my fiancé," she squealed in delight, forcing a pudgy hand into my face to show off one of those etched rune-looking rings you can find at Spencer's or at Topic. A little overwhelmed and caught off guard, I congratulated her before entering the apartment. When I got inside, I had to stop myself from almost retching again. You see, Piggy had always been a bit of a hoarder, even since we were children. But time had really not helped this habit. And what's worse, Wolfbeard was a lazy slob who had previously relied on his mother to clean up after him, so his mess just compounded the problem. The whole place smelled vaguely of garbage and cat piss. The living room was made up of a couch, coffee table, and a massive television that Wolfbeard had brought with him from his parents' house. Both the couch and coffee table were piled with clothes, garbage, and who knows what else. You could really feel the impact of the clutter, as the unit truly was tiny. In entirety, the unit was laid out in a linear line, one room connected to the next. It consisted of the front living room, then moved into what was the kitchen and dining space. The kitchen was pretty narrow, and seemed even worse than it really was, as the mountain of unwashed dishes coated in rotting food took up what little counter space there was, and crammed opposite of this was a table that was functionally useless due to the mountain of crap piled atop. Continuing our glum tour, we have the pièce de résistance, the single bedroom and connected bathroom. Based on the description of the rest of the unit, I'll let you use your imagination as to the state of this tiny, overstuffed room and the smell from which emanated. Needless to say, the apartment was disgusting, and it only added to my general feeling of uneasiness during the visit. From the very beginning, Wolfbeard made me incredibly uncomfortable. Despite supposedly being engaged to Piggy, from the moment I entered the apartment, he was eyeing me like a piece of meat. For this thrilling saga, we'll refer to myself as Calamity, my usual D&D moniker, appropriate given that this whole experience felt more like a wildly crafted fantasy than reality. While I'm by no means some sort of supermodel, I do try to put a bit of effort into my appearance. I'm rather busty despite being slender, and am quite tall at a little over 5'8". My friends often make Amazon warrior jokes at me, but I just threaten to crush their skulls like sparrow egg. Sorry for the bad accent. I also love all things horror and occult, so naturally I'm into a witchy alternative style, and love to dress in dark makeup and clothes. Oftentimes this puts off or spooks away potential creeps, which is great, but in Wolfbeard's case, it made me appear as some sort of tantalizing mystery he desperately wanted to unwrap. He delusionally fancied himself as an old-fashioned, quote-unquote, gothic-type gentleman, and the dark-haired milady before him all but begged for a gallant protector such as himself. Anyways, after bulldozing some of the crap off the couch, Wolfbeard made a sweeping motion to gesture Piggy and I to take a seat. Upon reluctantly doing so, I was dismayed to find Wolfbeard planting himself on the ground next to me, rather than his fiancée, leaning back on the couch uncomfortably close to me. Despite the discomfort of his looming presence, eventually my nose went blind to the lingering cloud of stench,
and I was actually able to enjoy catching up with Miss Piggy. Despite having become even more awkward and overly invested in anime, she still seemed to be much the same person from all those years ago, and chatting with her was fun. It was odd, though, as every so often Piggy and Wolfbeard would have these strange little exchanges. Wolfbeard would frown and grasp his chest dramatically for a moment, or briefly clutch his head in his hands before shooting a dire look at Miss Piggy. In turn, she'd paste a worried expression on her face and extend a gentle hand as if to reassure him that everything was all right. I didn't know what was going on and assumed it was a weird couples thing between them, so I tried my best to ignore it. That is, until right around nightfall. Noticing the sky beginning to darken, Wolfbeard dramatically stood up and waddled to the window. Once again, he dramatically grasped his chest and violently whipped his head away. At this, Miss Piggy shot up from the couch and bounded over to him, clutching onto him like a pose from an old romance novel. Confused, I watched the scene beginning to unfold before me.
"Are you going to be all right, my love?"
Miss Piggy softly cooed, looking over her shoulder out into the night air beyond the window. "It's a full moon tonight," Wolfbeard hoarsely croaked in response, dramatically turning away from her.
"You can control it. I know you can," Piggy warbled, clutching to him tighter still.
"I should go, just to be safe," Wolfbeard whispered back. At this, he strode through the apartment in an almost slow-motion fashion. I imagine he thought he looked really epic or something, but in reality, he just looked like some kind of wounded animal hauling himself back to its den to die. Upon reaching the door, he paused in the frame, looked out at me sadly, then, with a sigh, closed the door behind him. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, what the hell is going on? And that's when Piggy comes up to me with a direly serious look on her face.
"Calamity, I need to tell you a secret. Do you promise not to tell anyone? Wolfbeard's life could be endangered if you spread this around, so please, take it seriously."
I paused, not sure what other horrors could possibly be awaiting me that evening, but the curiosity got the better of me, so I hesitantly agreed.
"Wolfbeard is a lichen."
I sat positively bamboozled, blinking furiously as my brain tried to process the sheer stupidity that this grown-ass woman had just thrown my way. Mistaking this for me not understanding, she continued.
"A lichen is what most people would call a werewolf."
"You're telling me that Wolfbeard is a werewolf?" I repeated slowly, in one last-ditch effort to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding some sort of joke or prank they were pulling on me. "Yes," Miss Piggy whispered, no hint of humor on her face.
"Usually he can restrain himself pretty well, but tonight is a full moon, so he's afraid he could lose control since he has to transform."
It took every ounce of self-restraint in my body to not burst out laughing on the spot. I couldn't tell at the time and still don't know to this day if it was just some weird, socially awkward game the two of them played together or if she genuinely believed him, but either way, what ensued was positively wild. Miss Piggy proceeded to tell me the tale of how she had learned of Wolfbeard's oh-so-dark secret back in high school, and how they had fallen in love because he had learned to tame the beast in his heart. Mind you, all the while of this going on, Wolfbeard had started making these ridiculous growling noises and knocking things about in the closed-off bedroom. After a few minutes of this, I could hear the sound of a window sliding and a resounding thud. At this, Miss Piggy hurriedly led me back alongside her to investigate. I should clarify, they lived on the ground floor, and the bedroom had one large window that lacked a screen and opened directly into the parking lot. Well, lo and behold, when Piggy and I arrived at the bedroom, the window was open and there is no sign of our dashing lycanthropic gentle sir. At this point, I had reached my quota of how much bullshit I could handle in one evening, so I used the excuse of needing to get back to my dorm for school the following day to take my leave. I told Miss Piggy how nice it was to catch up with her and the Wolfbeard's secret was safe with me, and quickly gathered my things. However, as I neared the front door, before I could reach for it, it burst open. Standing in the doorway was Wolfbeard once more, now panting wildly and dripping with sweat. If I thought he smelled bad before, he was now positively noxious. He also had what looked like some dirt quickly rubbed onto his forearms, as if meant to convince me he had been out terrorizing the countryside in the 5 minutes he'd been out of the apartment. Feeding into his delusion, Piggy ran into his arms and coddled him like he had just escaped a harrowing experience. She asked him if his quote-unquote transformation was painful, and he just pathetically nodded in response. Turning to me with what I imagine he thought was collected coolness, he ran a hand through his sweat-soaked hair and addressed me. I hope I didn't scare you, Calamity. I know I can get a little primal in this moon phase. Oh, no, Miss Piggy told me you know how to control yourself, I responded, knowing damn well it wasn't good to play into their game, but honestly not knowing how else to end the situation. Well, it was great meeting you, but I've got classes in the morning, so I'm gonna take off now. At this, he held out his sweaty, stinking, dirt-encrusted arms as if expecting me to hug him. There was, quite possibly, nothing else on this earth that I wanted to do less than hug him, to be honest. So I was quick to dodge him and blame it on not wanting the dirt on his arms to get on my clothes. His response to this was to literally throw his shoulders down and pout like an overgrown toddler, and, with 100% seriousness and no irony, say, "Aw, sad panda." It seemed to become a passionate mission of Wolfbeard's to try to get as close to me and touch me as much as he physically could anytime I was near over the encounters to come. And believe it or not, this evening wasn't even the worst of my encounters with him. Oh no. Despite being quote-unquote engaged, Wolfbeard would soon decide that he wanted more than just friendship with yours truly. And that's another story to come. And that concludes Chapter 1. If this is your first time listening to this story, A, thank you so much for picking my channel and joining in on these shenanigans. I can't wait to read more to you, and I hope you like my content. And B, if you thought this first chapter was weird, boy howdy, hold on to your socks, because Wolfbeard pulls out all the stops when it comes to being creepy and manipulative and just being a downright jerk. Just, wow. It baffles me and kind of scares me as a woman that there are guys out there like this, but I know that we girls can be just as bad. I mean, actually, for those of you guys who don't know, there's a whole other saga called the Miss Piggy Saga, or like the Miss Piggy Chronicles or something that Madame Macabre wrote. She's just as bad. She's a bad time, y'all. Neckbeards are awful. Why are we like this as humans? Just take no for an answer. Anyway, if you like my content, please commence with a thumb war with the like button. I would greatly appreciate it. Because if you win, you like my channel. If you don't win, you still like my channel. So it's a win-win-win situation. Never mind, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, I would greatly appreciate it. I plan on continuing this saga first. But if you have any suggestions or requests, please send them to thehumblenerinthecloset at gmail.com, and I will gladly go through those. That being said, I'm gonna skedaddle off now, but remember, be the kind of person that you wish there was more of in the world, and I'll see y'all later. Bye!